Hi there, I'm Sydney, and welcome back to She Dreams in Green. Today we are talking about begonias, one of my favorite topics. I'm going to present a lot of information in this video. A lot of the information in this video can be found online, but I did my best to kind of get it all together so I can present it for you. So it's going to be a lot. Sit down, grab a notepad, and let's get into it. Okay, I have notes in front of me, so if I'm looking down, it's because I cannot remember all of this on my own. My brain can only hold on to so much, okay? Okay, so what are begonias? So begonias are a massive, diverse group of flowering plants. It is the fifth largest genus in the world. There's over 2,000 different types of species and also 19,000 different cultivars, at least, right? With begonias, it can get kind of crazy because everybody is hybridizing all the time. So the very first begonia that was cultivated was called Begonia minor, named by Charles Plumier and was named after Michael Begon, who was like somebody in charge. I don't know where. They've been used as ornamental plants, as food, as medicine. They are so diverse. This is my favorite. Begonias and anthuriums are my favorite, but begonias hold a very special place in my heart. I'm sure by the end of this, you'll see that. This is one of my favorite topics. I can talk about it probably forever. So, okay, so there's two different classifications or ways to classify begonias. The first one is horticultural, and the second one is botanical. So, botanical is used by botanists, taxonomists. It's being used for like studying and naming, all that, right? It's like the scientific classification. And then horticultural classification is grouped into 8 horticultural groups, which we're about to go into. So the one that's most important to like the average plant collector is the horticultural classifications. That's the one that you'll hear the most about. Let's get into the 8 different types of horticultural classifications. So the first one is rhizomatous. They are characterized by round rhizomes that creep along the soil surface. So most begonias, not most, a lot of begonias are kind of ground coverage or on the bottom of jungle floors. However, begonias can also be found on the sides of cliffs and growing in rocks and things like that. But the rhizomatous are on the bottom. They have these round rhizomes. They can grow upright. Some of them can grow upright depending on the type. And it also depending on the type, some of them bloom year round and some of them are like a late winter, early spring to kind of prepare for the spring. They tend to be shallow rooted. Okay, so a lot of rhizomatous, like I have one here. I have one here. No, that's not it. I have a rhizomatous that I'll bring in just a minute to show, and it is like the perfect example of a rhizomatous begonia. Like if you see it, you'll know. How do you care for them? Now, rhizomatous can be difficult. They can be difficult, period, bottom line, because in the rhizome, they hold on to moisture, hydration. That's what that rhizome is for. So people tend to overwater them because of that. They're not considering the hydration they already have, and drowning them too frequently will make them rot, especially because they have those shallow roots. The different type of pot you put them in, it should be a shallow pot so that they can fill out the pot. Putting them in a very deep pot can cause issues with root rot. Holding on to that moisture at the bottom of the pot for too long and can kind of creep up into the soil, root rot, whatever, all that. Hopefully that all made sense. In my mind, that made sense. So let them dry a little bit in between waterings. Don't take their watering too seriously. They'll be okay because they have that rhizome. My dog's barking. Sorry, as soon as I started to get into flow state, Belle wanted to scream at the neighbors. Anyways, so yeah, be careful with rhizomatous begonias because they will rot on you. and they don't need as much water or as frequent of watering as you might think. So be careful with that. Um, some honorable mentions, some examples of rhizomatous begonias is the beefsteak begonia, Madame O'Reilly, Masoniana, and Europhylla. Okay, so this next one is probably my favorite type of begonia, or at least top two for sure. Um, cane or cane-like begonias. So they're characterized by these long jointed stems, and those joints are nodes, known as nodes. And the joints are kind of swollen, and it gives the appearance of bamboo, which is where we get the cane-like name. The female flowers tend to hang in large clusters. Oh, I think I have one behind me I can show you. And the flowers can be different colors, pink, red, whatever. Let's see. This is Begonia white ice. Oh, one of them just dropped off. Oh, two of them just dropped off. Okay, I'm losing examples here. Bleh. So they're usually in a cluster right there. It would be like a cluster of a couple of these. And this is a female flower. Me stopping to show you something. Squirrel! That is the ovary of the female flower. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that white ice. So how do you care for them? So these roots tend to be deeper, and so like a standard pot is fine. They need a heavy base because they're a cane. They can become a little bit top heavy as the top grows beautifully, wonderfully. Like maculata, I have one right here. Maculata can get to like 5 feet. So think about how top heavy that can become. So they need a heavier base, or would prefer a heavier base so they don't fall over. Okay. You can propagate these by stem cuttings. I didn't mention it before, I don't think, but rhizomatous begonias can be propped by stem, leaf, and rhizome. And then here's another cane I brought to show you. This is Jim's Cotton Candy. Look at that. Look at you. And you can, let me show you the stem. Can you see the stem? Yeah, you can. There you go. So you see how it kind of bows out at the node, and it looks like bamboo. I love this one. I love the draping, and the backs of the leaves are red, so it kind of shines through. You know, most people would be like I mean, it's not fancy or anything, and they wouldn't be super excited about it, but I love this one. I actually propped this one. I'll show you later. So cutie pie. So yeah, some examples: white ice, maculata, looking glass. This is Jim's Cotton Candy. Yeah, love a cane. Love a cane. I have too many, probably too many. So the next category of begonias is the shrub-like begonias. So they look, or they can look sometimes like a cane begonia. They produce a number of stems that come from the ground, and they kind of grow, and so it looks kind of like a shrub because they're kind of all growing up at the bottom. The leaves can be glossy. They can also be covered in little short hairs, which are also called trichomes. The stems usually grow in kind of like a zigzag pattern, and the care is pretty similar to a cane, I would say. I think the most important thing with anything that is going to be holding on to moisture in its stem, right? Like the rhizomatous, also the cane, the shrub-like, is make sure not to overwater. They can go a little dry in between waterings. They'll be okay. Their roots also tend to be deeper because they have, or medium, not super deep, maybe not like exactly like a cane. But the whole point of that deep or shallow roots is dependent on like how they would be in the wild. So while a rhizomatous creeps along the bottom floor of its habitat, it doesn't really need those roots that are going to hold it in because it's not getting very tall. It's kind of short. Whereas like a cane begonia is going to grow really tall. There might be wind, so it needs to be firmly rooted into the ground. So it has those deeper roots. So this is kind of somewhere in between. Okay, so this is Begonia ulmifolia, which is a good example of a shrub-like. Look at the way it's growing. Okay, first of all, look at the roots. Yeah, baby, she's rooted. Then take a look at these little, oh, you see that zigzag pattern? That's a good way to show it. Oh, let me see. Kind of similar to a cane. Boom. She's really big. And also has trichomes, little tiny baby hairs. I think they're white on here. This thing is kind of, yeah, they're white hairs on here. I have it staked up by these clear stakes, these little acrylic stakes, but this has gotten too big to where it doesn't even really matter. It's just starting to get unruly. I need to water this ASAP before it dies. It's real dry. Okay, we'll do that. Another example of a shrub-like begonia is Begonia Sinbad. Trailing or scandent type begonias, they have a trailing growth pattern. So they can also grow up like a post or like a stake, whatever you know, a wall basically. And they make really good hanging baskets. I don't think I have any trailing begonias. But some examples are Begonia moly-poly, Panasofki, and Gamella. So Google that and you'll find that. So the next category of begonias is the thick stem begonias. So they have thick upright stems with short internodes. They usually drop their lower leaves and just kind of have like a top thing of leaves. The leaves can be smooth or hairy. Their care, they do like to get, like all other begonias, they like to get fairly dry in between waterings. They're best propagated by stem, but they can also be propagated by leaf. Some examples are Jocelynoi and Gardneri or Gardneri. I'll show you on the screen. The next kind is like the most common, like if you're not a begonia enthusiast, you probably think of wax begonias when you think of begonias. It's the ones that they sell at the big box stores. They have those waxy leaves. It's where they get the name from. They're also called semperflorens. They are frequently grown as in annual landscapes in the temperate climates. They are ever blooming. Most of them are ever blooming. They have a short growth habit, short but full. So that's why they put them in, like, you know, the landscaping, whatever, like, what is that called? Like the garden basket? No. They put them in raised garden beds and things like that in landscaping because they tend to be pretty full. They're cheap. So their care is depending on what type they are. So if they have green leaves, they're better in shade. If they have that bronze leaf, they can be in brighter sun or full sun even. A lot of people will bring them inside. So like if you have them outside, sometimes they bring them inside because they'll die off in the winter unless you bring them inside, and then they can be a house plant during the winter months and then go back out. Some examples of this is the Cuculata, Begonia charm, and Begonia dragonwing. Okay, the next one is tuberous begonias. So this includes species and cultivars with a swollen underground stem. They lose the top part of their stem annually, and they don't usually go dormant. They can be used in bonsai. They're used in bonsai. A couple examples are dredgy, I don't know, or dredgii, I don't know how to say that. And then Begonia boliviensis, maybe. These words, like I'm not very good with words and spelling and things like that, so I'm like trying my best. I'm sure if you Google Or you know what? I'll put some pictures up and that'll be helpful. Everybody can put their eyes on it and then come back to this video if you need a reference. Let's do that. Okay, so the last subgroup in the horticultural characterization is Rex culturum or Rex begonias. So this is a group of hybrids that have a rhizomatous growth pattern, but are separated from rhizomatous because they have unique colors, patterns, and textures. So they said descended from an Indian species that was first introduced as Begonia rex in the 1850s. So they are wildly hybridized. I mean, if you look up Rex begonias, you will probably get 1 million different types of Rex begonias. So they are commonly bred and hybridized, and they have all different types, colors, patterns. I mean, the leaves, the foliage can be all different types of colors: reds, pinks, greens, purples, silvers, all that. They are shallow rooted, and the thing about them is they prefer like the highest amount of humidity out of all types of begonias. They want humidity, and they will let you know if you do not give them enough humidity. Okay. But do also leave them slightly dry in between waterings. Okay, so they want hydration, they don't want to be soaking wet. They're finicky, they can be very difficult. That's one of the reasons that I think people disregard begonias, is because you immediately go to a Rex because they're the prettiest, and then you're immediately regretting it because they're difficult. They have a high standard of care of what they want. And without that, it can be stressful. So keep them fairly dry during the winter. A lot of them will go dormant. And if they do go dormant, you don't want to be soaking them, which is what I think I did to one of these. I was soaking it like it was summertime and it didn't need that. And so it's died back a bit. Some examples of this are like Steve's Leaves Cosmic Candy, of course, Begonia Rex, the Begonia Rex, and then like Harmony's Later Gator. Harmony's Later Gator has like greens and pinks, purple. I mean, just really beautiful, intricate looking foliage. Types of begonias. Let's talk about the American Begonia Society. Okay, the society that has done so much for this genus, this family of plants that I love so much. Okay. So the American Begonia Society is a horticultural society devoted to the promotion, cultivation, and study of begonias. The plant family is called Begoniaceae. The Society was founded during the time of the Great Depression, and on January in 1932, not sure how many years ago that was, a handful of enthusiasts gathered together, and they were led by Herbert, either Dickman or Dykeman, and they met in Long Beach, California. And the goal of that meeting was to form an organization in the name of begonias. And the group that emerged was called the California Begonia Society at that time. And by June of 1934, so 2 years later, give or take, the name was changed to the American Begonia Society to reflect a more national representation. The American Begonia Society is also referred to as ABS. That's what I'll be calling it, okay? And it has at least 25 branches in the United States. If there isn't an ABS chapter in your area, they encourage you to consider starting a new one, right? If you like to grow begonias and you have a friend that likes to grow begonias and the friend has a friend, you're almost halfway there, as it only takes 7 members of the American Begonia Society to join together to form a branch. So I got that from the ABS website, which is begonias.org. So if you're interested in creating a branch, hit them up, okay? The Begonia Society ABS, has been so monumental in my love of plants and my plant collecting. I am really nervous in public places where there's strangers. I just tend to be an anxious girly, and I really wanted to go to begonia meetings. In the beginning, I was so nervous to do it. I kept putting it off. I put it off for like 3 months after hearing about it and learning about the Begonia Society, and then deciding I was going to go. It was a couple of months, and I couldn't get myself there. Finally, they had like a terrarium workshop, and I was like, oh, I want to do this so bad, and I finally just went, and I didn't talk to anybody really, and I did my terrarium, and then I left, and I was like, that was so cool. So again, the next month I went. Okay, I went again, and again didn't talk to anybody, just kind of was by myself, went quickly, and then left right before I could talk to anybody. um but at that second meeting, I think it was that second meeting, they had a speaker, and this person was from Indonesia. I can't remember the name. I'll put it up if I can recall it. Um, and they were doing research on begonias, and they were talking about their studies in Indonesia and different parts of maybe Malaysia, or I'm not sure, but I was so blown away. And I finally felt like I was surrounded by people who had the same interests in me. I'm the only person, besides maybe one other person at the time, who really I knew in my life appreciated plants to this degree. And so to be surrounded by people who really understood plants and wanted to, I say like begonia nerds or plant nerds, like it was so exciting to be like, oh, I'm not the only one here. Like people actually really care about this stuff and it's interesting to them. And I was so geeked out. Like I was just so excited. Um, and to, I guess it's like the sense of community that you get from being around like-minded people or people who just have a common interest. It was really exciting to me, and so that's what kept me coming back. And then, not only to mention, I gained so much knowledge by going to meetings. You're learning about like historical scientific things that have happened within the plant research community, or about different cultivars, or swapping cuttings with people, and those kind of things really just got me fired up. And I look forward to my begonia meetings every month, and the events that they host and things like that. It's exciting stuff. So I really recommend it. If you're kind of a loner like me and you love plants, look into it, see if they have one in your community. And if they don't, maybe you can start thinking about making your own branch. So I hope you do. Now that I've talked about the different types of begonias and I've talked about the American Begonia Society, I want to talk about substrates. Okay. Now, I'm not an expert. Okay. I kill begonias all the time. So do not take my word or my recommendation as law. Do your own research. Get on the Begonia Society website and look through their resources there and find out what works best for you. So substrates depend on where you're growing your begonias. Are you growing in a cabinet? Are you growing in a terrarium? Are you growing indoors, outdoors, whatever? It's dependent. Your substrate is going to be dependent on how you're growing your begonias. So with that being said, soil does need to be changed every so often. And you'll know this by paying attention to your plant. If you're in tune with your plant and paying attention to your plant, you'll know when it's time, whether it's the roots coming out of the pot or it is drying so quickly that you can't even catch a breath. That is when you need to repot it. The soil also will start to break down, and it'll eventually lose its draining capability or its absorption capability even. And those spaces that your roots need to help oxygenate will collapse. So pay attention to your plant. It'll tell you when it's time. And if you don't know when it's time, start Googling or come back to this video. Who knows? You'll also need, for begonias specifically, you need a porous mix. They have tiny, baby, delicate roots. They will throw a fit if you mess with them too much. So be mindful of that. And back when I was talking about the different types of begonias, we kind of talked about letting them dry out in between. Begonias, because their roots are so delicate, and they can be more shallow roots, can be prone to root rot. So you need to, I mean, every plant can get root rot, but it is something that you have to pay special attention to, specifically with begonias. So making sure that your substrate is airy enough, it's light enough, so that it is not becoming oversaturated. If you have a substrate that is too dense, you're gonna kill your begonia. That's just a fact. I have done it. Everyone I know who loves plants has done it. So it's part of the process, but definitely find something that works for you. Okay. When repotting, be careful with those fine baby begonia roots. I tend to either up pot and just put it straight into a new pot, or I'm going to like shake out and tap out the old soil. I'm never breaking their roots apart. I'm like really very mindful of their roots. I'm very delicate with them. I don't know. I mean, maybe other people, I feel like, are not as worried about that. But in my experience, the times where I've been more aggressive with their roots are the times where they died shortly after. So the ABS recommends for an outdoor begonia mix something similar to this. So 1 part coco coir base planter mix, and then 1 part leaf mold, preferably oak. I don't know what leaf mold is, but I will post a picture of leaf mold here. As you can tell, I don't use it. So I don't know what that means, what leaf mold is, but we'll find out. And then 1 part small orchid bark. So 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch. So a smaller size orchid bark. And then 1 part No. 2 or larger perlite. So a chunkier perlite, I'm guessing. That's for outdoor. So that's so that it's not holding, that those things, those chunkier parts are keeping moisture within them, but so that the water can come through. Here, ABS also recommends for indoor substrate something similar to 1 part coco coir base planter mix, which is what they had in the outdoor, and then 1 part small size orchid bark, and then 1 part No. 2 size perlite or larger. 1 part No. 2 or larger perlite. So perlite, bark, and coco coir. That's all nice, and I like those recommendations actually, but this is what this girl uses. If I have all my supplies, what I'm using is a mix of cocoa peat, okay, so like the core, but not chunks, like husks. It's like the chopped peat. So I like the peat as a base because it is so airy when it dries. It's very like loamy and soft, and it doesn't tend to get super compact. So air can flow through to those roots. So I mix that with perlite. And then if I'm feeling fancy, I'll be honest, I don't do it often, but if I remember to, and if I'm feeling fancy, I'll put charcoal, horticultural charcoal in there. And that just helps with keeping the roots kind of fresh and to ward off any bacteria, mold, whatever. Another reason I like the cocoa, and I'm using a smaller perlite as well, because the begonia roots, again, are pretty fine. Like you can see here in this one how itty tiny baby they are. Even though there's a lot, they're pretty thin. And so I don't find that it needs big chunky things. I think a finer mix works perfectly. The downside to the mix that I like to use is that it dries fast. So if it's a begonia that is extra thirsty, what I'll do is I'll do like an indoor potting mix and just put a small amount, just enough to kind of use that as some like a sponge for moisture, and mix it really good. So it's in there, but it's not overpowering. It's going to be a small part. So maybe if there's 4 things in there, I would probably put a fourth or less of the potting soil. And I use specifically like moisture control. So that's what I would do if I'm potting up a begonia that specifically dries out really quickly or is super, super thirsty. I also have some begonias in semi-hydro. So it's really up to you and how you like to, like what what flow works best for you. All my anthurium are in semi-hydro. A couple of other types of plants are also in semi-hydro. I find it works really well for like a delicate, thirsty begonia. So maybe like a Rex would be good. I have my pink urchin and my variegated snow-capped, both in pond, that are doing so well in it. I have a crazy pink hybrid that's in pond that isn't doing so well in it. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everyone. I think they definitely do better in a light, airy, soilless mix like the cocoa peat and perlite, or the orchid bark and perlite. I think they do better in that overall. But yeah, it is definitely something I like to play around with. I have a lot of plants in semi-hydro. Okay, so now we get to the extra fun part. We're talking about propagation. So you can propagate many different ways. That's the tagline. So first, I have propagated in vermiculite, moss, and perlite. Oh, also soil. So those 4 is what I can talk about. The only ones that I would recommend for me and like a everyday person growing begonias, like not a nursery or professional, I would recommend sticking to moss or perlite, or if you have it, vermiculite, um, unless you're doing like a cane begonia. Cane begonia, soil. Hands down. It's so easy to prop a cane begonia in soil. Other than that, stick to like a prop box with moss or perlite. I have a couple here to show you examples of how I've propped. The first type of propagation you can do with the begonia is a stem prop. Now you can put this in water, you can put it in a terrarium with moss or perlite. You can also just, if it's a cane, you can stick it right into the soil, which is what I did with this. So this is Begonia Maurice-Amy, and it props really easily. So I literally cut on the stem line, give it a couple nodes. This one has plenty. Let's see, plenty. Okay, and push a little hole into the soil, stick the stem in, leave it alone. Leave it alone. 2 weeks, you'll have roots. And if you can pull on the, let's see, if you can pull or lift it up by the stem and it doesn't come out of the pot, it's rooted. You're good to go. You have a new plant. It's pretty easy. I don't even really need to put this in a terrarium or a high humidity, nada. I can just put it on the fucking counter and it'll be fine. That's one of the reasons I love canes so much. Easy peasy. No drama. This is an example of a Rex begonia. You can tell because of the bright, look at this. Can you see it really? I don't know if you can tell how gorgeous that leaf is. So this leaf here, it has green, it has pink, it's got all kinds of things going on. There you go. That's a Rex, okay? This one, I'm going to show you how to propagate by leaf. This one propagates super easily, in my opinion, in my experience. I can throw a piece of a leaf into the prop box and it'll grow roots and new leaves. So this one has been super easy for me to propagate, and it's been very hardy for me, which Rexes aren't. However, this is probably like a more commercial one. Look at the rhizome on the back. This is a good learning opportunity. Look at that rhizome. Interesting looking. Looks like a little alien. I'll show you in a second. I need scissors. Okay, now this is one that I grew from stem. So it has I don't want to disturb the roots too much. Okay, so what I did is leaf stem, cut on the stem, stuck it in the substrate, and leaves will come. My phone literally died while recording this, and if you knew how many times I've been interrupted trying to film this. Anyways, we're almost done here, okay? This is Steve's Leaves Mars Rising, and I'm gonna try and be delicate with it.
But basically it's a stem cut. So cut the leaf, or cut the stem, right? And so the leaf is attached, and just stick it in the substrate, which this happened to be moss in the prop box. And you'll see when I put it up close that the leaves started to sprout from the bottom of the stem. So sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they'll do it here at the top in the center near the apex. No, near the fucking sinus, near the sinus of the, that's not the word either I'm looking for. That's a sinus. Okay. Can you see it? Do you see how the stem goes down into the moss? And then there's little leaves coming out of that. So that is a rhizomatous stem prop. This one, now you can't tell by looking at it, but this one is Masoniana Mountain, I believe it is. And this one was propped from a leaf. So I had cut up pieces of a leaf, threw it into a prop box, forgot about it, came back, plant. Since then, she's transitioned into soil. So you can't see where the leaf was, but literally, as long as it has, and I'll show you here in a second how to do it, as long as it has some of the main vein attached to that leaf, whenever you throw it into the prop box, it will grow. As long as it doesn't melt, of course. Cute. Also, I lost my microphone. I don't know why I'm still wearing it. Microphone has been booted because it's on the charger. So if it sounds crazy, it's because it is. So let me show you how to prop. So I usually take a leaf that is older, right? Not a baby leaf, a new leaf, but an older leaf and one that is healthy. So I'm gonna take this one. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is on the older side. And I'm gonna cut along the stem line. Okay. Now, like I said, leaves can grow from here, the base of the stem, right? They can also grow from here, the sinus. So with that being said, I could put this into soil just like that and it would be fine and it would grow, okay? What I like to do is if I'm gonna do a stem prop and I'm gonna keep this leaf intact, I'm gonna shorten this, because if I try to put this into my pot, the leaves are gonna be so far down. If they come out through here, they're gonna be so far down into the pot. So I tend to, like this, kind of lay it diagonal. So I would put it like this and put substrate on the bottom. You can't see that. Like I would lay it like that and put substrate and let it root that way. Or I'm gonna cut this and make it really short so that I can just lay it on top of the substrate. And now when the leaves come up from that little row, when they come up from here, they'll be close to the surface. So I'm going to show you the leaf and I'm going to point out the main vein. So this is important for leaf props, okay? So if you are cutting a leaf prop, means I'm cutting this leaf up into pieces and it's going to grow on its own. Each piece of the leaf will grow its own plant versus this one leaf growing one plant, okay? And we usually do that by wedge cutting. So what I'm going to do is, you can see here on this one specifically, those main veins right here, meaning it comes off of the apex and it has like a main vein going up into the plant. There you go. I'm going to cut in a way that leaves the main vein intact, not along the main vein, in between the main vein. And sometimes, you know, you can even cut this stem into pieces as you do it, okay? It'll make sense when I show you. Okay, so this is a wedge prop of a leaf. So what I would do is lay this on the soil, make like a little divot in the soil and stick that right inside. So that's an option, okay? So you could do that several times and make a plant with each one, which is what I'm gonna try and do with this since I've already chopped it. Let's see. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I don't need that many plants. Okay. So each of these have some of the main vein. Do you see that? You can see the main vein, so it'll likely sprout from right there at the end. Right. Why won't it focus? Right there, where that vein comes out. Or where that main vein is exposed to the air is where it'll grow from. So, you can do it in soil. I don't really have a lot of good success in propping straight into soil, again, unless it's a cane begonia. So it's totally up to you how you propagate. I would say experiment. If you're new to propagating begonias, experiment, right? Cut up this leaf just like I did and put one in each different substrate. Put this one in soil, this one in perlite, this one in vermiculite, that one in moss, and see what works best for you. I think the thing that is most important, that if you're propping in a terrarium, be mindful of the humidity in there. Don't overwater it because it is kind of a closed system already. A lot of begonias, when you're propping them, will melt if there's too much either humidity or water, and it won't be able to thrive. So be careful about that. And then in the same vein, if you're propping outside of a terrarium, make sure that you are not letting this dry out too much, because right now it's not sustaining itself. Being in that moist environment will help it to grow roots so it can sustain itself. If it doesn't have a moist environment, it's not gonna prop, and this is just gonna shrivel up and die, which will be a bummer because then it won't work. But once you get it figured out, once you decide what is your best way of propagating, you're gonna fall in love, right? Once you get the hang of it and you can do it easily with ease, it's gonna be good for you. It's gonna be so fun. You're gonna have so many begonias. Yeah, that's what happened here. At least that's what happened. So anyways, I'm gonna go put these in the terrarium. Hey friends, I am editing this back and realizing that I did not add how to propagate rhizomes. So I'm gonna put some pictures in here and hopefully that will do justice and you'll have an idea of how to propagate them. Maybe that's something I can make a video on later. I definitely intended to discuss rhizome propagations, but I think I just got too excited. So, sorry. If you are still here, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this video about begonias was helpful and maybe you even learned something from it. If you have any questions or if I didn't touch on something or you want to add something, drop it in the comments below and let's discuss it. See you next time.